For decades, there's been this one specific guide that countless couples have turned to ask the really hard questions before they walk down the aisle. So today, we're breaking down the essential framework from that super influential book, Before You Say I Do, by H. Norman Wright and Wes Roberts. Let's dive in and see what makes it such a timeless classic. The book kicks off with this really powerful quote. Right away, it frames marriage not as some kind of fairy tale, but as a high-stakes game where you can both win big or you can both lose. And really, the whole point of the book is to help you stack the odds in your favor through some very intentional preparation. So you can think of this guide as a roadmap, really. It's a journey of discovery and getting on the same page, and it's designed to be taken before you make that lifelong commitment. So let's get started on that path. Okay, so here's the journey the book takes us on. It starts with the very definition of marriage, then moves into understanding each other, figuring out how to set up a life together, learning to communicate, and tackling those big topics. And finally, it's all grounded in a spiritual foundation. All right, first things first. The guide asks us to basically throw out our old definition of marriage and start fresh. Because it argues how you see this commitment from the get-go, well, that changes everything. And here's the huge distinction the book makes. You see, a contract, that's just a legal thing, right? It's held together by the law and it's conditional. But a covenant, as the guide defines it, is this solemn pledge made under God. It's designed to last, not because of force, but because of an unconditional promise. And this one little shift in thinking, it's the foundation for literally everything else in the guide. Okay, so once you've got that covenant mindset down, the book shifts focus to the two people actually in the relationship. So, how do you deal with the reality that you're two completely different individuals? I really love this quote because it just perfectly captures a whole relationship arc. I mean, think about it, right? Those little quirks that first stir you in, maybe their spontaneity or their quiet nature, can later become the very things that drive you crazy. The book says, hey, that's not a red flag. It's totally normal. The real work is pushing through that friction to get to the good parts, illuminate, and unite. So the guide's whole take on this is that your differences aren't bugs, they're features. They can actually be the missing puzzle piece for each other, fulfilling needs you didn't even realize you had. The issue isn't the difference itself, but how you react to it. The goal isn't to change your partner, it's to appreciate what makes them unique. And the book is super clear on this last point. Trying to mold your partner into your idea of perfect isn't just a waste of time. The authors call it arrogance. So, okay, you've embraced your differences. Now what? How do you actually build a life together? This is where the guide dives into the super practical stuff about your expectations and your day-to-day roles. This is probably one of the most famous ideas from the book, The 3 Stages of Marriage. Of course, you start with enchantment. You're on cloud 9. But then, boom, reality hits. And the guide is really clear. This disenchantment phase, it's not a sign you failed. It's actually a totally predictable and even necessary step to get to real maturity, where your feet are on the ground and you're ready to work things out. And when it comes to the day-to-day stuff, the roles you play, the guide says you shouldn't just fall back on tradition. Instead, you need to write your own rule book. It's all about sitting down and having an honest talk about who's better at handling the finances, who's going to do which chores. It's about building a system that works for you. All right, let's get into the big one. This is what so many people would call the absolute lifeblood of any relationship. Because if you get this part wrong, well, nothing else really matters. We're talking communication and conflict. Wow. This statistic right here is always a real showstopper. According to the research in the book, the actual words you say, that's only 7% of your message. Just let that sink in for a second. A whopping 93% is your tone and your body language. It's an amazing reminder that saying, I'm fine, can mean a dozen different things. And it's almost never the words that tell the whole story. So the guide lays out this path to get to real intimacy. Most of our day-to-day chat happens at level 1, cliches like, how's it going? And level 2, just swapping facts. But a really strong marriage, that needs you to push deeper, to start sharing ideas and then your real feelings, and ultimately aiming for that level 5, complete, open, honest communication. Look, when a fight happens, we all have our go-to style. And if you look at the first 4 here, withdraw, win, yield, and compromise, they all have a trade-off. Somebody always loses something. The guide really pushes couples to aim for that 5th style, resolve. It's the only one where the goal is to actually fix the problem and strengthen the relationship at the same time. It's about turning a fight into a moment of connection. Okay, time for the big 3. The book spends a lot of time on the topics that can be the toughest, but are also the most important for couples to get on the same page about: love, sex, and money. This is where the book makes you take a really honest look in the mirror and ask, why am I actually getting married? Are you running from something, like a bad situation at home or a fear of being alone? Or are you running towards something positive, like true companionship and a desire to build a life with this specific person? And it argues that your motivation, that matters a lot. Now, when we're talking about intimacy, the guide gives us this really holistic four-part picture. Yeah, there's procreation, of course, but there's also recreation, the pure fun and joy of it. It's also a powerful form of communication, a way to express love without words. And finally, it's a release for stress and tension. And the book says all four of these are totally valid and super important for a healthy bond. And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. This is what the authors say is the bedrock, the thing that holds everything else up, the spiritual foundation of the marriage. For the authors, this really is the master key. Spiritual intimacy isn't just about, say, going to church together. It's about actively inviting a third party, Jesus Christ, right into the middle of your relationship as a guide, a source of strength, and the ultimate decision maker for you as a couple. So, after all that, what's the big takeaway from Before You Say I Do? It's pretty simple, really. A great marriage doesn't just happen by accident. It's the result of deliberate, honest work, of having the tough conversations before they turn into huge problems, and building a shared vision for your future together. And the whole thing really boils down to this one profound, open-ended question. And it's not just a question you ask once before the wedding. It's meant to be a guide for every single challenge and every joy you're going to face. Because from the book's point of view, the answer to this question, well, that's what turns a marriage from a simple contract into a true covenant.